Hey there, lovely people. Welcome back to another Story Study Saturday. I'm Sammi, and I'm a writer who likes to learn about writing through reading and share what I learn with you. This week, I am talking about Scorched by Cassie Swindon. I was actually really interested in this book. I fully drawn in by the cover, read the summary. I was like, that sounds super cool. I definitely want this book. And I ended up putting it like on a wish list on Amazon for the Kindle book. And when I got like, hey, you delayed your shipping, here's some free money, I used that to get this book and then promptly forgot about it. So now that I finally picked it up, let's talk about it. If you don't know anything about Scorched by Cassie Swindon, here is a quick summary. Scorched is a story told in two perspectives. Kira was just a girl who had gone through some hardships. She'd been abused by men her whole life. So when a strange man shows up and tells her what to do, and then she develops some strange, painful, magical powers, she screams out her frustrations, wishing all men were gone. Unbeknownst to her, that wish would be granted the moment it leaves her mouth. Jedax has grown up in a world knowing that he is magic. And he learns young that normal, non-magic people are a danger to his village. He's cast out from his home after a misguided action and needs Kira to be able to make his way back home. He's been tracking her for over a year, trying to get her necklace, a family heirloom. And she wishes that all men are gone because of him. But he doesn't disappear with the rest. So let's get into my thoughts on this one. There were so many moments of just like my regular life that I was thinking about what could, should, or would come next in the story because the plot was just so engaging and I just really wanted to know what the next thing was going to be. I really just wanted to pick the book up every time that I didn't have it. The world is very unique at the start. And the premise of the wish to get rid of all of the males is what she says actually in the book. She wishes that all males were gone is very interesting in terms of how it affects the society and the people who are left behind after all of the males are gotten rid of and who is counted in that and who isn't. There's also the potential for Kira to have some self-discovery that's very engaging throughout the whole process of reading the book. There's so much that she could learn if she really wanted to, and you just keep being drawn into finding these things that maybe she would learn and like holding out for those experiences to come that keeps you going through the story. Now on to some things that I think could be improved. I really wanted to like this book. This book had so much potential. I wanted so badly to keep the plot going that I was doing it in my head outside of the book. And then in the book, there were some things that I definitely think could have been improved. It's got so much potential. It seems like every single character that is introduced has multiple dimensions, but is only capable of having one dimension at a time. So all of the characters are like very flat while you're experiencing them, and that one dimension changes. So they also don't feel very consistent with how they're portrayed throughout the book. So for example, Kira, she literally wishes that all of the men were gone in the world. That's her first experience. And then when Jedax is still there, after she wishes that all men were gone, because of how he's behaving, she does a full 180 and just trusts him blindly because that's a good way to keep the plot moving, because if she continued to not trust him, it would be harder to get her to go along with where he was going. The flip of that is just so drastic so quickly and like whiplash in terms of character development that it went from like I hate men to I trust this man with my life so quickly. A lot of the character developments and growth as a person, like the lessons that they learn and that you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy you got there. I'm so happy you made this self-discovery. The next time that the perspective flips and you go from Kira to Jedax back to Kira, that lesson that we learned, that character growth that went through in the previous chapter from that perspective is nowhere to be seen. It's just like gone. So you had this moment of development and then it just like deflates back into a standard, like giving that one dimension a different dimension again. You go back to one without the growth, which is so frustrating when you're looking at it. I desperately wish that there was more consistency with like, I've changed my perspective on this thing. I'm going to change my behaviors based on that thing because I've changed my perspective. I wish that there was more of that. Along with the characters, the world also needed some more fleshing out. It is a very unique space. It is a very unique world. It's a very unique perspective on having a magical system in a non-magic world or having a like side-by-side realm of magic and non-magic. It's a really interesting world. It's a really interesting, unique take on a world because now all of the men are gone through the whole process of the story. It's very interesting, but it just needs more shaping. It needs more structure and more like consistencies. Just like the characters also needed more consistencies. The non-magical part of this world is more technologically advanced than our current world, but we don't get enough explanation of that. So you go in with your frame of reference, which is this world's non-magical world, and then they have devices that don't make any sense because you don't know what they're supposed to be doing. But at the same time, some things aren't more advanced than what we have right now. So it's like, it's very confusing because it doesn't get enough time to breathe in the space and the structure of the world that we can understand what is more technologically advanced and what is less so, and why, or what impact those changes make to the world, and why that is an important distinction to make. Why make this world different from ours currently at all? I think if they had structures of technology that were clearly like in response to the magical world, then that would have been something that would make sense as to like, this technological advancement happened because we had to combat or compete with magical abilities, but we didn't have to worry about like texting. That wasn't our priority because we had to put in our energy into preventing whatever. So the change of that technology wasn't clear, and then trying to figure out what things did when it was just sort of implied what they did, and like you just had to assume that it was gonna work the way that it was supposed to work until it didn't, took away from a lot of the immersion that was possible for the world of like, that totally makes sense why this hovercraft crashed. I understand that that happened because of this thing, probably. It just sort of like, oh, okay, hovercraft crashed. Great. Why? What are we doing? How does that even happen? I don't have any explanations for what the technology is, what it does, or why it does it. So I just don't care about, like, it's all feels like a plot device rather than something that happens because of inside the book circumstances. It feels like it's all motivated through plot rather than the actual things that are going on in the story, if that makes sense. The chemistry between the characters was also very forced. It felt very forced to me. It might not for other people, but it felt very much like opportunity to flirt, go! And then they would flirt. It's like very Hallmark movie flirting, where it's like big and kind of uncomfortable and clearly just for, oh my gosh, they're flirting. It doesn't come from a place that feels motivated by the characters, similar to that first note. Kira hates men. Why is Kira flirting so actively? What are we doing? There's just so many things that just felt disconnected and unmotivated. It just needed more cohesion all around. And if we had a good reason for them to be flirting, I'm sure that this flirting wouldn't have felt forced. If it made sense for their characters at that point of the story to be flirting with each other, then they would. It wouldn't have been something that I would notice because clearly it's a romance book. Like, it's a romantasy story. That's the point of it. When they were flirting, it was like that one dimension of their character went fully from whatever it was before to I'm flirting with this person now. And it was like a big shift. And if they were just a little bit more fleshed out, a little bit more consistent, a little bit more three-dimensional, then I probably wouldn't have this note at all. There also were too many bad guys at any given moment. There are several different conflicts going on at the same time, and all of them are coming from different directions and different perspectives and different reasons that there is a conflict going on. And because there are so many different things that are working against the characters, it lowers the stakes of every single one of them and doesn't allow them to be as bad of a bad guy, because it's like, okay, well, we're gonna fight this guy and we're gonna figure that out, but then we've also got this guy over here and we're gonna fight them. And because this character, who has not been consistent in terms of learning how to do their magic or being engaged with the conflicts, is able to fight all of the bad guys, none of them really have any threat to anybody else. It seems like they wanted to have a lot of loose ends at the end of the book so that the series could continue, but I have no interest in continuing the series because there was just so many things that just lessened the intensity of everything. And I think that would have been perfectly fine to do, have some loose ends, if you just didn't introduce all of the bad guys around the same period of time. You can have you're dialed in. This is book 1's bad guy, and then you have hints of book 2's bad guy, but it's not as pressing as we have to take care of book 1's bad guy, and then solve that, and then something else happens that leads to what needs to happen in book 2, and you get to play back on those hints of book 2's bad guys towards the end of the book, and then be like, okay, we still have to keep going. We're still going, and then go into the second book. But if you have like 5 bad guys and you take care of 2 of them, and then you're like, all right, we've got 3 more for the next book, let's go. I don't want to do that. Everything in it has so much potential. There was so much potential for this story, the concept, the world, and it just didn't get dialed in the way that it needed to, and I wanted it so badly to be good. So what can writers learn from this book? Line edits can be really, really helpful of just making sure that each individual line makes sense together, makes sense as an individual piece, and then as a whole. Your characters need to feel like whole people. They need to feel complete and like they are a person. They need to have strengths and flaws and goals and tactics and a personality. And while they don't need to be the same throughout the whole book, they in fact probably shouldn't be the exact same person throughout the whole book, the core of who they are needs to remain consistent. Who they are at the very center of themselves, their driving forces, those things need to keep moving them through the world. And any developments that they make to their character at the outside of their core needs to stay around as they are going. If they're like, I don't like this, I'm gonna do this instead, and then that's their new perspective of the world, they're gonna try and keep that the same. Sometimes it may go back a little bit, but they're gonna try and push it back into that new place because they've learned and they've grown and they've developed. And that's the engaging part of a story. That's the engaging part of why your main character is your main character, why you stick with that person through the whole story. Your world building doesn't have to be completely 100% crystal clear and fully explained at any given point. That is so unnecessary. But if you are writing something that is in a world that's different from our own, having somebody who doesn't know the world that you're building, hasn't really talked to you about it or like heard the thought process around how things are going to work, whatever, having them read it and checking in with them and seeing what parts of this world confused you, what parts of this world stood out to you, what parts of this world don't work, what parts of this world do work, what's going on with your experience of this, what questions do you have, so that you can clear the things up that are important to the story and have that be something other readers can also engage with, not knowing anything about the backstory of the world. Tension and pacing make your story move the way that it does. It makes the experience of the story what it is. And those work very, very closely together. So you want to pay attention to how those are interweaving. Does the tension release too quickly? Is it solved too soon? Or does the strength of the tension wane because you're holding on to it too long throughout the scenes in the story? The tension of the conflict, of the strife, of the interpersonal connections, of the conflict. What's going on that's keeping that engaging? Sometimes you can even remove tension from one space and focus it in a different area and get like really great flirting scenes that make sense for your characters, because it's like, I am so stressed out about this thing and I don't want to think about it at all, and then they like change the direction of that energy and then go flirt with somebody, and it's like, oh my gosh, wow, that's so motivated. But you have to come in with like, where is the tension? Where is it going? How long does it take to be released? And how does that affect the pacing? Because your tension is going to pull your pacing along, and your pacing is going to determine how effective your tension is. So just keep in mind that those two things play together and they will make or break your story. But that is all that I've got for today. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. Have you ever picked up a book explicitly because of the cover and the concept and just been so disappointed by the outcome of those things? Because I am like, it's happened too many times for me. Like, you have so much potential and I'm just gonna keep hoping that you keep going and then you meet that potential and then it just doesn't. It's just so sad. And I'd be interested to see what some later works of Cassie's would look like, because I'm pretty sure that this series was published within the last year. So it's not like an older work. It is current to what she's doing, but it's just got such a great concept and just not enough follow through that I would love to see what it would look like if she shifted and focused more on the follow through of her concepts, because clearly world building and like developing these conflicts are there, and like what starts the story she's got nailed, but you just need more towards the end. Okay, that's really all that I've got for you today. I am officially done. I will see you guys next week.